Welcome to The Explainer. We're often told that our mood is, well, all in our head. But what if one of the most powerful tools for our mental well-being is actually on our plate? Today, we're digging into the really surprising connection between what we eat and how we feel.
This entire explainer actually kicked off because of a fantastic question from one of you. A viewer named Elton asked us to really look into the science behind diet and depression. So Elton, this one's for you, and for anyone else who's curious about this incredibly important topic. We've gone through a bunch of studies to put this together.
Okay, right up front, we have to make something absolutely crystal clear. We are not doctors. This is not medical advice. We're putting this out there for informational purposes only. So please always talk to a healthcare professional about any health concerns. It's super important.
All right, with that out of the way, let's get to the big question. We're told to eat our fruits and veggies all the time, but what does the science actually say? Can changing your diet truly make a dent in something as complex and serious as depression? Let's find out.
So first, to even think about a solution, we have to understand the problem. And when you look at depression and diet, experts talk about this vicious downward spiral.
Here's how it works, as explained by psychologist Dr. Rami Nader. Depression just zaps your energy and your motivation. All of a sudden, things that seem simple, like planning a meal, going to a crowded supermarket, or even just doing the dishes, they can feel totally overwhelming. So naturally, the quality of your diet starts to slip. You reach for what's easy, not necessarily what's nutritious. And that poor nutrition, it can actually fuel the depression, making the whole cycle that much harder to break.
To really get a handle on this link, some researchers say we need to zoom out, way out, and look at our modern world.
There's a professor, Steve Alardi, who calls depression a disease of civilization. And his argument is pretty fascinating. He says that biologically, we're all walking around with Stone Age bodies, but we're living in a Space Age world. Our brains and bodies were built for a life that was active, spent outdoors, deeply social, with a diet of whole foods. Our modern lifestyle, it's often the exact opposite, and that mismatch can really take a toll.
And the numbers? Wow, they really drive this home. A 2023 Gallup poll found that 29% of adults in the U.S. have been diagnosed with depression at some point in their lifetime. To put that in perspective, that's up almost 10% from just 2015. So this disease of civilization seems to be on the rise.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty science. How can a piece of fruit or vegetable physically change what's going on in your brain? Well, the research points to three main pathways.
First up is inflammation. There's a compound called arachidonic acid, which you find mostly in foods like chicken and eggs. It can trigger these inflammatory responses in the body. And that inflammation isn't just about sore joints. Research is suggesting it can actually inflame our brains. And that brain inflammation has been directly linked to depression.
Second is the brain chemistry itself. Studies have found that people who are depressed often have higher levels of an enzyme in their brain called MAO. Now, you can think of MAO as a little cleanup crew that goes around and gets rid of feel-good brain chemicals like serotonin. When you have too much MAO, that cleanup crew is working overtime, clearing out those chemicals too fast.
But here's where it gets really cool. Nature has a built-in counter effect. A lot of common plant foods, we're talking apples, berries, onions, things like that, are full of these things called phytonutrients. And it turns out, these compounds seem to act as natural MAO inhibitors. So they basically tell that overactive cleanup crew to slow down, allowing more of those nice, feel-good neurotransmitters to stick around in the brain.
And the third pathway is something you've probably heard a lot about lately, the gut-brain axis. This is a huge area of research right now, and it's showing this incredible two-way highway of communication between your gut and your brain. The health of your gut microbiome, all those trillions of little bacteria in your digestive system, is directly tied to your mental health. And we're now seeing that diets high in ultra-processed foods can lead to an unhealthy imbalance down there, which can send negative signals right up to the brain.
So, okay, the theory sounds pretty convincing, right? But what happens when you actually put it to the test? Let's look at the clinical trials, the highest level of scientific evidence we have.
This quote comes from a landmark study called the SMILES trial. It was a randomized controlled trial, which is the gold standard, specifically designed to see if changing someone's diet could treat major depression. And their conclusion was a potential game changer. Dietary improvement could be an effective and accessible treatment.
And this chart just lays out the results so clearly. I mean, look at this. The bar on the left is the group that got dietary counseling. The bar on the right is the control group that got social support, which is also helpful, of course. But after just 12 weeks, almost a third of the people in the diet group achieved full remission. That is 4 times higher than the group that just got social support. Pretty incredible.
And the SMILES trial isn't an outlier. The evidence just keeps piling up. Another study found a plant-based diet at a big company didn't just improve depression and anxiety, but even productivity. And when you look at massive meta-analyses, they consistently show that healthier ways of eating, like a Mediterranean diet, are linked with a lower risk for depression. The science is really starting to point in one direction.
So, with all this compelling science, what's the bottom line? What does this all mean for us in our actual day-to-day lives? Let's break down the key takeaways.
If you or someone you love is struggling, the research suggests you could try a whole food, plant-based diet for just a few weeks and see how you feel. And look, if that sounds way too hard, which, remembering that downward spiral is totally understandable, the science says even small steps can help. You could try just adding one of these things to your diet, berries, which we saw can act on that MAO enzyme, or nuts, or fruits, or beans, or greens. And one last thing. If you're trying to support a family member, research shows it makes a huge difference if the whole family makes the change together.
And all of this leaves us with a pretty powerful final thought. You know, in our high-tech world, we're always searching for the next big solution to the mental health crisis. New therapies, new medications, but have we been overlooking one of the most simple, powerful, and accessible tools we have, the very food we put on our plates every single day?